Hey guys, what's up? It's Slaw, welcoming back to another episode of Walks with Slaw. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, I am using the iPhone SE 3rd gen that I got. I actually got everything set up for today. And yes, it is slightly better because, as I have already explained, the main advantage is just the fact that it still has the big bezels on the bottom and top of the display, so I can see the screen and use the screen much better than the 13 mini, because the puffball on the microphone would really cut into the 13 mini's screen, and that was just no good. That was just no good. It was doable, but it was kind of annoying when pressing the start and stop record button. So I really wasn't a fan of that. I just didn't like it at all. And I had that idea for a long time. Now, the other reason is that the SE 3rd gen uses Apple's standard rounded design that they had used since the 6, and this is the rounded edges, more precisely, because I guess technically they still use rounded now, but it's different. I mean, back in these days it was more of like a true rounded edge. And for holding, which is what really the only purpose of the recording is, it actually makes sense to have not only the extra bezel to basically further prevent accidental like screen contact, but in addition to the extra bezel, the extra curve, because having that cushioned curve is actually superior for the comfort of holding it in your hand. It is better than the squared off edges, and since I'm using it without a case, when I do record, it just makes more sense. Some super minor things that I'm just thinking of now that I didn't even think of before. The lock button is physically smaller on the SE 3rd gen, which means that technically there's a lower chance that it would get accidentally triggered. Kind of an interesting advantage specifically for recording. They increased and elongated the size of the lock button, I believe, starting with the iPhone 10. So that's just a little interesting tidbit of information there that I didn't even think about until this moment. Not that that ever happened, even with all the recording I did with the 13 mini. I don't think it ever happened, but that is what it is. Now, an additional advantage is that everything just being on a separate phone, it kind of makes more sense. I don't believe anything is really on that 13 mini because I honestly didn't use it that much, but to just have a dedicated phone, this phone for recording, it makes a lot of sense because now, all the data and storage is just going to be used for audio recording. So it's a lot more optimized that way. Now, sadly, I do not have the 256 gigabyte SE 3rd gen because I kind of bought these on a whim. I bought this on a whim, and it was just a really good price. The condition is immaculate. I mean, they look brand new, and the battery health was also, I think, maybe like 97, 98 or something like that. So it was really too good to pass up. It was way too good to pass up for the price I paid. It was an extremely good price. And so here we are. You know, I have the 128. I really wanted that 256, but the 256 SE third gen seems fairly hard to come by. Like it doesn't seem like a very common. It just, I don't know. Like, I'm assuming sales would have been low for it to begin with, because I don't really know who would be buying a iPhone SE who would also be wanting like extra storage. To me, those two things don't really add up or make that much sense for each other. So that's just my thoughts on that. Why I think it's like as hard as it is to find. In my opinion, that's the reason. That's the reason why it's hard to find. So I like it. Now, the single caveat, and this is a true caveat that I'm a little bit upset about, is the straighter squared off edges on the 13 mini, while being less comfortable, I feel like we're actually grippier. Meaning I was able to kind of grip and hold the phone in a more secure fashion. But I don't know, that's only a little bit of a caveat. And then the final sad thing is that, well, the weight is slightly heavier on this by, I think, like a gram, by like 1, 2, or 3 grams, so that's kind of negligible, the weight. But the real annoying thing is the size of the phone is bulkier because of the bezels, and so it is noticeably wider. It is a slightly larger footprint, which is worse for recording, because obviously for recording you would just want as small of a footprint as possible. When I was first looking into this, I was actually even considering the iPhone SE that was based on the iPhone 5's design, but the CPU in that is just so old, I don't really think it's worth it. And even now that I'm just thinking about it, the latest generation iPod Touch, well, it was the fifth generation, but the latest one was not the fifth. But it's the same design as the fifth. That's why I'm saying that. The latest CPU iPod Touch, I think, has the same CPU as the iPhone 7, and really the iPod Touch would be the ideal microphone recording device. That thing is exceptionally lightweight and thin and lightweight, and narrower, like the iPhone SE would have been. But again, sadly, the CPU inside of it just isn't really good. I could probably get away with it, and it is something like I hadn't had thought about it before, actually. If I'm going to be completely honest, I wasn't really considering it. But now that I'm like going through all these different models, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, like I can't believe I didn't think of just using an iPod. I think the main flaw with the iPod is the battery life would be kind of annoying, just because of how like absurdly tiny it is. But nonetheless, I think this is the correct choice. At the end of the day, it is the CPU is the same as the 13 mini, which is good, because for the transcription that I do, you don't really want too terrible of a CPU. It's just I don't know. I think it matters, but oh, actually, yeah, because I think the app isn't available on older iOS versions, so I would have to use a different app or make some kind of a compromise. Hold on one sec. I'm going to put my phone on the ground. It's much hotter outside than I thought, and I don't like it at all. So I had to, like, take my coat off. Really wasn't expecting this. So, for the rest of the day, I'm not even bringing my coat out. I don't understand how it's this hot, but I should have checked the weather. I guess I should have checked the weather. But anyways, yeah, so I guess I would just have to do the it would just get very complicatedly annoying because I like to have the transcription available. I haven't really been doing it as much as I would like to, just because there's, a bunch of extra steps, and then I like to use GPT 5.1, and then I think GPT 5.1 has issues with the listening to it. When you try to listen to it, it um it won't work. I think because 5.1 used it typed a lot more than the other versions, so yeah, there was that it just seems to glitch out every single time. Whether I use an old iPhone or a newer iPhone, nothing really seems to solve the problem. So I don't know why, but GPT 5.1, its voice just doesn't work. It like just starts buffering and it stops speaking after a certain point. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's why it's just annoying because I want to do the transcription, but it's just not there's not it's not there's not enough of a direct setup. Like I really wish you could just record and save recordings directly in GPT locally, and so it would just already be within GPT, like offline. You could do what I'm doing and it would just already be in the app. Like that would really be a good feature, but the infrastructure is not set up for that because I'm like the first person to even be doing this. But again, I think in the future, how it would work is your thoughts could just be recorded, and then you could in real time get advice and expertise, just of having it constantly uploaded into kind of a live feed where GPT is live reacting to different thoughts you have. But a lot of people wouldn't even like that, like I would, because I obviously like it because I would learn a lot and I would be able to make a lot of progress, really, because that's what. But a lot of people, what they would want is to be able to think what they want and not have to deal with, oh, well, you're actually wrong because of this, this, and this. Like, most people just aren't like me. I mean, even in the previous conversations where we have that talk about, how I feel we really got to grapple with autonomy and how it's a flaw with humanity. Well, I think most people would get that thought and then they wouldn't want to look it up. They would just want to believe that they're right or something like that. Whereas I'm obviously not like that. Like I have a thought, but I'll look it up. I'll see, hey, is this a legitimately good idea or is it a bad idea? Like I don't, what does the data say about it? What do we have on human psychology or like an ethical analysis of everything, I'm very interested to be corrected if I'm wrong and to find out where I'm right and where to reinforce where I'm already right. But then if I'm wrong about something, figure that out too. You know what I mean? That's just how I am as a person, and I guess it's kind of frustrating because you really don't you live in a world where the majority of people are not like that. The majority of people don't want advice. They don't want to improve their life at all beyond money. I mean, people will take plenty of advice when it comes to money, but when it comes to like ideological truth, people have a really hard time with it. They just want to have their opinions. And, in my case, it's like, I don't know, I believed all kinds of stuff. And then, some stuff I really changed my mind on. Now, in retrospect, I think it's incorrect, and so I tweak that. And I change this and I change that. You know what like I'm not someone who's just stuck in their ways. I have a history of, you know, monitoring and changing my beliefs and my input about things, you know? I have a history of doing that and just yeah, being good in those kind of ways. It's a good thing, really. It really is a good thing, but I don't know that most people actually see it that way, you know? I think most people they just stick to what they want to believe and they just like what they want to believe. Like I said, except when it comes to money. I think most people when it comes to money, that's probably the thing that they're going to want to figure out how to make more money, you know? Because that's an objective thing, but it's has a subjective reward. So people still like that as again it actually increases a person's autonomy to make more money. Whereas if you want to research into like how to eat healthier, then you know that's actually reducing your autonomy. So that's why I actually think the human mind probably revolves around the autonomy and the preservation of it. It's just in a way that's fairly short-sighted. So it's kind of funny because people still love TikTok and social media, and they don't understand that they're actually giving up their autonomy in that case. So people would happily give up their autonomy in the sake of, like, if it's for a reward, if it's the path of least resistance, if them giving up their autonomy ends up making it so that they can have a higher threshold for entertainment or dopamine, I think people just do it. They don't really care. You know, like they take the path of least resistance. It's almost like if a person is aware that their autonomy is getting taken, that's when they start to get freaked out. You know, even if it's for the better, you know, whether it's for the better, whether it's for the worse, doesn't really matter. If a person's autonomy is being threatened or taken, then they'll just yeah, then they'll start freaking out. But again, it's a little bit silly because I still think most people honestly don't do that much about their autonomy. I think a lot of people end up giving it up and they don't realize it, and that's what's kind of funny because again it's like, oh, they want to have the freedom to eat unhealthy, but then you're not realizing that when you eat unhealthy you're actually giving up your autonomy because you're when you put sugar in your body it creates and multiplies certain bacteria in your digestive system that actually craves more sugar. So you're ceding your autonomy every time that you eat sugar to make your body need to crave more sugar by feeding that bacteria. See what I mean? So a lot of these things, it's like, I don't think I'm wrong for how much I'm thinking about autonomy and questioning it and really trying to define it because I still think it's going to be one of the main debates in the future. That is, if we're on the good timeline, because I always talk about that, you know, we might not be on the good timeline. And in that case, I don't really know what the future is going to look like, you know? So, yeah, there's a lot of things to grapple with and think about for sure. And people aren't doing it. People are just letting things go for the worse and they're not really understanding what's going on. And I don't know, they're going to have to pay for that, you know, one way or another. And it's a shame because I want to try to enlighten people. I want to try to open up people's minds. I want it to be more of a gentle transition in the future. But instead, I think it's going to be some calamity is going to happen. And then people are just going to be thrust into the future by force. And it's going to be painful. And it's not going to be the most moral or ethical way of dealing with things. You know, it's going to be some random thing that happens, and then now everybody has to have their autonomy lost and nobody's gonna like it. But it's like, hey, I told you so. We should have got on more of a regulated plan about how we were going to be doing this and implementing it, and you guys didn't want to do that. So, anyways, it's been schla, and now it's time to buy schla. So, see you schla.